Hello students, welcome again in this lecture series of Generic IPS Indian Knowledge System. I am Dr. Padmashree Mujumdar, Department of Economics, Modern College, Shivaji Nagar, and I am delivering my last third lecture on economic aspects of your module Arthashastra. And the title of today's lecture is Economic Policies in Arthashastra and its Relevance in Today's Economy. As you know, in Arthashastra, Chanakya has mentioned about various economic policies. These policies were related with trade, regulation of markets, and they were related with tax policies or the policies related to sources of revenues and also labor force. We have already completed in earlier two lectures the policies related to trade as well as regulation of markets. In this lecture, we are initially focusing our attention towards the tax policy given by Chanakya and Arthashastra, as well as the policy of other sources of revenue and the policy pertaining to the labor force. So, to begin with, we will focus our attention on tax policy. Taxation was considered as a fundamental pillar by Chanakya in state's financial system. According to him, tax is the most important source of tax revenue, or rather state revenue. Kautilya has suggested various taxes, and those taxes were based on certain principles. So he has recommended certain principles while imposing taxes by the government. What were the principles? The first principle was the taxing power of the state should be limited. That means the government should not impose taxes anytime without informing the people. So the limited power has been assigned to the government. The second principle was that the taxes should not be felt to be heavy or excessive. So instead of putting more taxes, it is better to keep the tax rates low and earn more and more money. The third principle was tax should hike only in a gradual manner. It means the taxes should not be increased immediately or instantly. It should slowly increase so that it will be bearable for the people. The next principle was taxes should be levied in the proper place, time and form. So kind of convenience is important while imposing the taxes for making the payment of the taxes. And the last principle which was recommended was tax level should be equitable and reasonable. That means the taxes should be imposed as per the capacity of a person to pay. And they should be reasonable in size, they should not be excessive. So ideally, the government should collect the taxes according to Chanakya like a honeybee that sucks just right amount of honey from the flower so that both can survive. And this was very interesting example that was given by Chanakya while explaining the tax principles. Now he has recommended various types of taxes. The first type that he has recommended was land tax. Land tax he has called as Bhu Pariksha. This tax was imposed on the land which was considered at that time as a primary source of revenue. Since agriculture was the prime activity of the economy, it has contributed lot in state revenue. The funds which were collected from agricultural tax was used majorly for development of the agricultural infrastructure and most importantly ensuring food security. The second tax recommended by Kautilya was customs duty, which is called as shulka. It consists the taxes which were imposed on imports as well as exports. Custom duty helped in regulating especially international trade and generating the revenue for the state as well. The import duty was 20% ad valorem. Now, what is ad valorem? It is a Latin phrase, and as per the meaning of this phrase, the taxes should be imposed according to the value of imported commodity. These taxes had to be paid by the foreigners at the city gate. And other than this customs duty, certain octroi and other gate tolls were also imposed on foreign commodities, which used to be 1/5 of the customs duty. The third tax suggested by Chanakya was called as transaction tax, which is known as Vyaji. This was a very important tax affecting every transaction in goods. It comprises basically sales tax and revenue collected by the way of surcharges. The transaction tax was automatically collected in the most of the transactions by uh, the government by considering the weight of the transactions and capacity to measure the volume of the transaction. The fourth tax recommended was known as professional tax, which is known as Vrittikara. It was imposed on an individual's profession or occupation. It played a very important role in redistributing the wealth and promoting the social equity. Because in this tax, the government used to impose more taxes on those professions which are earning more than those who are earning less. So the principle of equity was absolutely followed in this particular tax. The next tax was very interesting, which is known as monopoly tax, which is called as parigha. Kautilya suggested this tax to be paid by those manufacturers whom the permission was given to manufacture or trade a commodity which was coming under the monopoly of the government. It was like a license fee for permitting the production of the commodity or trading of a commodity which was earlier done by the government. The sixth category of the tax was royalty, which is known as prakriya. A fixed amount has to be paid in this tax on leased mines, salt pans, boats for count, or even pearl fishing. And this tax was paid to the government because these are the natural resources, and the government is permitting the respective private producers to use those resources. So in lieu of such type of the use of resources, the certain share in production should be given under this tax by those producers to the government. And the next and the last tax recommended by Kautilya was the tax on uh, army maintenance. So it is called as army maintenance tax, which is called as Sena Bhaktam. It was an occasional tax which was imposed on people when army was sent to a location specifically to protect the country. So it is a kind of uh, appeal made by the government to make the payment of such type of the taxes for the betterment of the army, which is eventually helping the respective government or respective country from the foreign attack. Other than these taxes, there are certain other sources of revenue which were identified by Kautilya in his in the book Arthashastra. In it, the first source that he has mentioned was income from crown property. This comprises the revenue that can be earned from the state property. The major share was from crown agricultural land, that is, the land which is possessed by the government. The crops grown on such type of the lands were usually grains, beans, lentils, oilseeds, sugarcane, fibers, etc. And certain proportion of those produce used to be paid by the people to the government in the form of land taxes or land revenue. This constituted major part of revenue. It also comprises the revenue which is received by the government from mining, metallurgy, irrigation work, as well as forest. The second non-tax source of revenue was income from state-controlled activities. It comprises revenue from manufacturing activities conducted by the government. This comprises revenue from manufacture of textile, salt, alcoholic liquor, entertainment, betting, and also gambling. This was a major source of revenue for the government other than the tax revenue. Now, Let us move on to the views of Kautilya related to labor, labor laws, and policies recommended by Kautilya on labor force. Kautilya has considered the role of labor force as crucial in the development of the economy. Efficient allocation and utilization of labor force were emphasized in Kautilyan economy. He advocated allocation of work among workers as per their skills in different occupations. Because according to him, this will help in enhancing their productivity or optimizing the resource allocation and also for promotion of economic growth. Kautilya has emphasized the need for individuals to acquire some relevant skills through training. So, if the skills are not available adequately, then he recommended that certain special training programs should be organized. Besides, he has also given permission to laborers for their mobility. That means labor mobility across industries as well as regions were also encouraged. That means the labor was considered free to move from one industry to other industry, region to other region to earn more and more wages. Chanakya has emphasized on fair wages and ethical treatment that should be given to the workers at workplace. Various labor laws were enacted at that time on the recommendation of Chanakya for the betterment of the workers. Now let us focus our attention on those labor laws. But before that, let us see how labor force was classified by Chanakya into certain categories. Labor force was classified by Chanakya into various categories comprising bonded labor, slaves, unpaid labor, casual labor, piece rate workers, regular wage earners, as well as self-employed. The wages which were given to all of them needs to be related or matching with the labor productivity. Now let us begin with each category of labor and the rules which were made pertaining to the same. The first type was bonded labor. The bonded labor is the one which is connected to that particular employer and working for him as per the employer's wish. Who was usually considered as a bonded labor? According to Chanakya, it was one who mortgaged himself or is mortgaged by someone else. That means if a person has taken a loan and against that loan he mortgaged his own services, or his services were mortgaged by someone else, then he can be termed as bonded labor. Even bonded labor is the one who is sent at the times of distress for work in return of certain maintenance. That means he is not having any livelihood for living, and that's the main reason he is serving as a bonded labor. Or even the one who works off a fine because of certain offense, he is been considered as a bonded labor, or captured in a war. So those many who are usually captured in a war can be termed as a bonded labor. Interestingly, Chanakya has recommended certain rules for the well-being of the bonded labor also. So let us focus our attention on those rules. The first two categories that are mentioned right now by me were permitted to redeem by paying the amount owed. That means those laborers which turn to be bonded labor against a loan taken can be freed from bonded labor class if they repay the loan back. Second rule was related to cheating a bonded labor. Cheating pertaining to wages or depriving him or her from the rights are considered at that time as a punishable offense by Chanakya. A female bonded labor shall not be harassed in any manner. Any offense against a bonded female labor was considered punishable at that time. If the master commits any offense against a bonded labor, then he shall forfeit the amount owed. That means any kind of offense will make the bonded labor receive his amount of money from the master. Another category which was suggested by Kautilya was of casual labor. Now, casual labor is a labor who is working for a particular employer and receiving the wages as per the work done. The casual labor should be paid wages as per the agreement. And if there is no such type of the agreement, then the wages should be given in accordance of the nature of work as well as the time spent for doing that particular activity. The customary rate for this category was 1/10 of what they had produced. So somewhere the wages were related with the productivity of a worker. The another category of worker was self-employed. Even the rules were mentioned about the self-employed individual. Self-employed is a person who is working for himself, and it comprises the service providers, which are artisans or craftsmen or doctors, storytellers or cooks, etc. They were also paid remuneration as decided by the expert in their profession. The dispute about the wages shall be settled only on the basis of the evidence of witnesses or even on the spot inquiry shall be held at that particular time period. The next category of worker is contractual worker, that is contractual labor, which works for a particular type of work, piecemeal or particular assignment was usually given under the contractual category. The employee should perform his duties at the right place and time and in correct manner. And he can't refuse the work for which he has received salary. That was the condition recommended by Kautilya. The contractual employee shall receive for work done and not for not doing the work. So the wages was strictly assigned or given as per the work done. The employee was not obliged to work for the same employer. After completing the task allotted to him, he can change the employer. So that flexibility was given to the worker, that if he wanted to make the change in his employer after one particular contract is over, then he could able to do so. A contract employee shall have a right to additional compensation if he does more work than the agreed upon in the contract. Now, the another category was the category of a slave. Slaves were of four kinds. Either they were born in house, inherited, or bought, that is purchased, or obtained in some other way. Kautilya has recommended welfare provisions, especially for the female slave in the time of pregnancy and also other minors. There was a contract for sale or purchase of slave which can be revoked in a time period of 1 year. So any of the contract can be revoked, that means changed in a period of 1 year. Now the next category that we are going to consider was all about how Chanakya's contribution to Arthashastra has relevance in today's economy. Chanakya has considered various concepts and aspects in economics which are providing the basis for human existence as well as survival. And we can find trace of the Chanakya's policies in even modern economic policy formulation. So far, we have considered in this lecture tax policy and the policy related to labor. However, we have already considered in earlier two lectures the policy related to trade, policy related to agriculture, and other economic activities. So let us find out the relevance of principles and policies given by Chanakya pertaining to these classes with today's policies. To begin with, let us focus on Chanakya's tax principles and canons of taxes which are followed by today's government. What Chanakya has recommended, that the taxing power of the state should be limited, or taxes should not be felt to be heavy or excessive for the taxpayer. Tax hike should be introduced gradually, or taxes should be levied in a proper manner. In the sense, it should be imposed on proper place, time, and form. Tax level should be equitable and reasonable. And the last principle recommended was tax revenue should be used for the sake of development. Now look at the canons towards the right side of this slide. Like today's government are following all these canons, while canons are principles of taxes. That is, canon of equity speaks about the progressive taxes. So we have income tax in India, which is progressive in nature. That means it is imposed more on those who earn more and less on those who earn less. Then the second principle is canon of economy, ease of collection of taxes. There should not be much cost involved in collection of the revenue, which was also recommended by Chanakya. Canon of certainty. The tax rate should be declared properly, and there should be certainty while making the tax payments to the taxpayer. The another principle that is used by today's tax authorities was canon of productivity. Whatever tax revenue collected by the government is usually used for the sake of infrastructure development. Then there is canon of convenience also, that we used to pay, for example, GST at the time of purchase of commodity, which always help us making the payment of the taxes without any separate efforts. So it is proper convenience principle is maintained there, which was recommended by Chanakya also. And canon of elasticity is also there, that it should not be excessive, heavy. See, we have recently reduced the tax rate and increased the tax net as recommended by Chanakya again. Now let us find out the relevance of opinion of Chanakya pertaining to other sources of revenue and today's government's policies pertaining to the same. While speaking about other sources of revenue, Chanakya has recommended that the income earned from crown property and income from state control activities should be considered. This was exactly adopted by the modern economies as well. For instance, in the income from public enterprises is one of the important source of Indian government's revenue. We have public sector undertakings. The example of such enterprises can be given as BPCL or HPCL, and they are earning more money for the government, and that is a major source of revenue to the government also. The second thing that we are going to consider here is all about labor laws and rules. As in case of Chanakya, who has highlighted the importance of training that is to be given to the labor force for making them more skilled. On the same lines, even the present day employers are organizing certain training programs for the employees, which will help them updating their knowledge as well as skill. So there is relevance to this policy also. The another policy related to labor recommended was all about the rules pertaining to the work wages as well as work conditions of casual labor, contract labor, self-employed and bonded labor. Even today's labor laws consider all those rules related to wage, service condition and welfare facilities which were made available to the labor force. Now, the another area where you found the relevance of Arthashastra in today's economy was welfare policy of Chanakya. Chanakya has recommended the welfare policy pertaining to provision of basic needs or social support system or welfare of weaker section. Now, even today's government, especially in India, is providing all these facilities. Like the government is having public distribution system, that is nothing but the ration shops, where the weaker section of the society could able to get the basic food articles at a concessional or at a free rates. At the same time, the infrastructure development is the responsibility taken by the government for the benefits of the people. There were various public welfare programs which were run by the Indian government even today. The another policy recommended by Chanakya was related to consumer protection. And we have almost across the world, Consumer Protection Act was enacted. Then another policy related with animal welfare recommended by Chanakya. Chanakya has given certain rules to control the cruelty of animals while using them for economic activities. And in today's world, we have PETA to protect the rights of animals. PETA is People for Ethical Treatment of Animals. So there is a relevance of what Chanakya has given or propounded and today's policies. Now let us move on. The views of Chanakya on income disparity and poverty alleviation and its reference in today's world. Chanakya has recommended that protection should be given from famines and diseases to the people of the country. Besides, distribution of seeds and food or food for work program and other social security schemes about which we have already discussed in our first lecture were recommended by Chanakya. The same thing is what recommended or rather executed by today's government. In India, we have poverty alleviation program, which was started from 5th five-year plan, as we have given the slogan, remove poverty. Various employment generation schemes were started in India from that time period. With that, certain safety net was provided to children, to disabled, aged, women, and at the same time, a kind of guaranteed employment was given in India under MNREGA program, that is popularly known as Manrega scheme. Now, if you focus your attention on policy of Kautilya on corruption, then you would observe that similar type of punishment is also there in today's world. Kautilya, as you know, identified 40 ways of corruption and misbehavior of government servants. He has recommended punishment in the form of fine, imprisonment, and even death. In today's world also, various laws and authorities are established by the government to deal with the corruption made by ministers or made by any government officials or anyone who is in power. The example can be given of income tax authorities or enforcement directorate, which is popularly known as ED. So we could able to find out relevance of what was stated by Chanakya in Arthashastra with the today's economic policies. So in all, we can consider that in Arthashastra, Chanakya has given importance to the role of the government. He has stated a prosperous ruler will govern the state well, take up welfare activities for the people, and promote commercial activities with the result that soon the people also becomes prosperous. So, according to Kautilya, the economic policies should be such one which should not make only a king happy, but his subject also happy. That indicates the fact that the welfare policy should be such one which help the government to earn more money, at the same time provide the opportunities to the people of the country to earn more money and achieve the maximum satisfaction. So to end up, I would like to recite this Sanskrit shloka which was mentioned in Arthashastra. Praja sukhe sukham rajnya, prajanancha hite hitam, natma priyam hitam rajnya, prajanantu priyam hitam. Thank you.